Welcome to Rayce's Rundown. My name is Rayce.
My name is Joshua. I also go by JM.
And I'm Alex.
In this video, we will consider tourism and its effect on global communities.
We're going to approach this topic as a series of events.
So if you're ready to get your brain cows milked, we are. Let's get into it.
First, we're going to observe how tourism grew and why some specific areas were motivated to expand tourism within their cities. Tourism is the movement of peoples from their place of living to another place.
The tourist industry was one of the fastest growing industries in the world. It helped drive socio-economic development through its contribution towards employment, infrastructure development, and export revenue. The problem of over-tourism only emerged recently, just a couple of years ago.
Tourism has been present throughout the world prior to the 20th century. Though, as a result of globalization, many people were able to gain more freedoms. Due to the increase of freedom, tourism exploded in popularity from place to place, like Italy and Greece and other popular places you may have gone to, even maybe like this year. The population led to rapid development in many undeveloped areas, such as Mexico, with the tourism blowing up. The locals in the areas, such as Mexico, were given opportunities such as jobs, increased sales at their local businesses, and more income in their local areas or community. This increase of tourism helped them with themselves and their families as a result. The influence of culture also spread between locals and tourists, depending on deepening the knowledge of the cultures and strengthening international relationships.
From the early 1980s to around 1990, the oil supply in Dubai had been dwindling. Oil at this time was overwhelming, where the majority of the city's income. In the mid-1980s, Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum decided he needed to diversify his income for when the oil would inevitably run out in Dubai. This led to the development of large trade centers and a huge growth of tourism in the city throughout the 90s and up to today. In recent years, tourism is one of the main sources of income and brought in over $13.8 billion USD in 2019. This did take a drop due to COVID in 2020, down to only around $3 billion, but quickly rebounded due to some efforts by the government and is back up to $12.5 billion in 2022. Now on to JM.
Back in the early 20th century, the fall of the Republic of Venice lowered their ability to trade, consequently hurting the welfare of their citizens. The city began to move towards the mainland as it sought to make the city grow again. Simultaneously, Venice began to see tourism as an opportunity to alleviate their economic stress. However, with all these circumstances, it evoked a growing negative perspective towards tourism.
Now we're going to look into how the growth of tourism has aroused complications towards local inhabitants.
For example, in Dubai, this mass movement of new people in Dubai led to a very large growth of pollution in Dubai. Cruise ships became one of the prime way for tourists to spend time in Dubai, but also produced over 21,000 gallons of sewage, 170,000 gallons of wastewater, and 8,500 plastic water bottles per day. There's also the mass income and outgoing flights that happen at around 418,000 flights a year from Dubai International Airport. These two things, among other smaller pollutants such as more people making more trash and littering more, make Dubai a much more polluted place than before it had been a tourist hotspot.
Another example is in Santorini, Greece. Santorini has a similar problem of overcrowding, especially in the summer. It also has the problem where many tourists behave uncivilized, and as a result, large volumes of trash and pollution are littered commonly. With the spread of visitors into residential neighborhoods, this caused conflicts with locals. Many areas accepted the tourism industry and began a process named touristification. Touristification is a procedure by which a place changes to become an object for tourist consumption. For instance, in Venice, the economy began to rely mainly on tourism because of the possibility to generate large profits, enhanced by the city abnormally being built on an island.
Here's an example of a tourist-dependent restaurant next to the Grand Canal to attract visitors. Notice how it has a free Wi-Fi sign and a menu shown off with photos of the food.
Gentrification is the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new business, typically displacing current inhabitants in the process.
In Venice, houses of inhabitants are sold and converted to hotels or restaurants as a result of gentrification.
A graph by an MIT research brief depicts the city population in Venice steeply declining around the year 1950. The same time where tourism enlarged from globalization after World War II. Here's the population density in Venice in 1991, 2001, and 2011. All of these were facilitated by gentrification.
The effects of gentrification are very, very devastating on the places that it affects. Many areas that have been hit with gentrification have to adapt to these tourists. The change brings astronomical increases in rent, expulsion of residents, a decline in neighborhood diversity, and decreases in small businesses. Gentrification happens in many places around the world, such as New York City. It was greatly changed as many people started to travel to the city. We can even see it persisting till today, where it is very expensive to live there and many people travel there.
As a concern to the growing effects of overtourism, UNESCO says, of course, tourists are welcome, but the purpose of preserving heritage is lost. You invest public resources for preserving heritage, and then the beneficiary is essentially a private industry that has not contributed to the effort. And on top, it alienates the citizens. This explains how the tourism industry isn't handled properly in many areas, which inevitably subtracts the local culture.
Poverty rates throughout the world are a really big deal. Though with tourism spreading, it was able to help decrease poverty rates in places as Costa Rica and the Dominican Republic, just to name a few of the nations that are struggling at this moment. A study by the National Academy of Sciences correlates ecotourism with improving the lives of Costa Ricans. The study they conducted found that those living near protected areas and parks saw a 16% reduction in poverty. And while that was happening, in the Dominican Republic, the country has benefited the most out of any Latin American nation. And even though there's poverty in there, tourism was able to help decrease extreme poverty down to 1.6% of the population in 2018. Furthermore, malnutrition has also decreased and life expectancy has increased. Tourism has steadily contributed to help locals, and these are just a few examples to show how tourism brings improvement to these nations. Now, we're going to examine multiple events which have been directly related with the growing concerns of over-tourism.
As stated before, one of the resulting effects of the major amount of tourism in Dubai is that there was a large amount of trash with nothing to do with it. Since so many people had come to Dubai, they started producing more and more trash, around 8,200 tons of solid waste every single day. Majority of the solid waste in Dubai goes directly to landfills and dump sites. All of this waste sitting in landfills eventually begins to decompose and release methane gas, one of the main greenhouse gases contributing to global warming. Dubai also has a very warm climate compared to many states, which causes the methane to be released even quicker from decomposition, as the waste will decompose faster in warm climates than in cold climates. This makes Dubai a little bit of a pollution hotspot. This means that they produce more pollution than the average state or city of a similar population. This is definitely true for Dubai, as they make a significant amount more pollution than similarly sized cities.
From the rapid rise of tourism globally, many countries such as Mexico gained large amount of funds. These countries were shifting over time to become more reliant on this new income from tourism. Though these nations benefited from this income, it's also a double-edged sword. And this reliance eventually came back to get these nations. An example would be Mexico with its swine flu in 2009. During this epidemic, most of the tourism throughout Mexico were shut down, which caused a massive loss in profits. The locals during this time were hit with the influenza as well as a shortage of their income. Over the span of the epidemic, over 16,000 people in Mexico were not able to survive, and the lack of tourism reducing their income did not help them at all.
Finally, we are going to see these areas' efforts to ease the stress of over-tourism.
In 2015, cruise ships were banned from the Giudecca Canal of Venice. This lasted only 3 months, as it was reversed by the Regional Administrative Court. In Santorini, Greece, the European Parliament says, although the problem of over-tourism has been recognized, the lack of tourism governments and strategic cooperation between local and national authorities may put the destination at future risk.
Dubai does know that this is a problem, and they are actively working towards a better future as their recycling of waste has been rising rapidly through the past few years. They plan to go completely waste-free and be a fully circular society when it comes to waste by 2030, which would only boost their tourism even more by making it incredibly appealing. This does help to solve one more of the downsides of over-tourism, as the pollution being made would be decreased significantly.
And that's all you need to know about over-tourism and Rayce's rundown.
In this video, we reviewed the growth of tourism, how areas undergo touristification for economic benefit, how that leads to over-tourism disturbing local inhabitants, how they reacted, and measures to alleviate over-tourism.
Bye!